Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zeng here, and we are back with week 8 of the GBA. Of course, I'm the coach of the Melbourne Rotoms, and this week we're up against Danza, the coach of the LA Nidokings. First of all, I do have to apologize. This upload is going slightly up later, and I haven't uploaded last week's battle quite yet. The main reason is because I was on vacation for the last 10 days or so. So I had to play NV while I was on vacation in Europe, and I had to play Danza right after I got back from vacation pretty late. So I wasn't able to do a live recording for them, and I just wanted to get the games done. But yeah. That being said, still really fun games, and I'll be uploading the game against MV in the next few days or so. This week, of course, we're up against Danza, who is 3-4 going into this week, but he started the league 0-4, so he's been pulling quite the impressive comeback. And he's actually, I think, one of the stronger draft league players, definitely, in the league, so I was pretty scared going into this week. I watched his previous battles, and I felt like he had some really good team-building prowess. Yeah, I didn't really have too much time to prepare for this, which I feel bad about. The main thing that I came up with was this Rocky Helmet Infestation Toxapex set, which I felt like could really counter Palkia and Genesect if used properly. I was anticipating a Scarf Genesect set where I figured maybe he'd want to spam U-turn a lot, so I wanted to kind of be able to switch in Toxapex, chunk him down considerably with each of these attacks, and then the other goal was to maybe set up for a Rayquaza sweep. I figured he'd prioritize bringing Stealth Rocks on either Crocodile or Heatran, so I ended up going with the Scarf Defog Kartana set just to potentially get rid of Rocks in the late game and then sweep with Rayquaza. That was kind of the goal. Otherwise, I felt like I had some pretty decent offense. I mean, Aegislash really claws through a lot of things, and I ran a Life Orb Shadow Sneak variant to be able to one-shot both Mega Alakazam and Gengar, which I was quite afraid of. He had Heatran on his team. He didn't bring it ultimately, as you can see, but I was actually really scared of that, so I wanted to make sure I had ways to counter it. Everything on my team had a way to hit it for super effective. Probably leads to the reason why he did end up bringing it. Otherwise, relatively standard sets that I've been running. I didn't really feel like there was a major need for, Circuitry, mainly because it was outsped by a lot of things on his end. So didn't want to bring the Circuitry. Gligar didn't really seem like it really did much for me here. I actually really strongly considered Scarf Azelf because that could outspeed Scarf Genesect and get the one-shot with the Fire-type attack, but yeah, I didn't feel like it fit in too well otherwise, and I was a little bit uncomfortable with that. I think Magmortar could have had some use, but once again, I was worried about Heatran. I knew there was the Crocodile as well. And obviously the Palkia. Magmortar would have been a decent wall to the Genesect, but I felt comfortable enough with the Pokemon that I was bringing into this week. So yeah, wasn't too sure what he was going to lead with, so I ended up going with my Lopunny just to get some chip damage out, potentially with the Fake Out, and scout for what he wants to do. The Fake Out in this matchup can actually be pretty important because chipping things like Scarf Genesect and more importantly Alakazam can be quite important. So I go with the Lopunny, not really sure what to expect from his end, and he ends up leading with Crocodile. So I'm not 100% sure on what kind of set this Crocodile is. We do see the Intimidate, but that's not too shocking. I'm thinking, I mean, it could be a Scarf variant with Superpower, and I was actually a little bit worried about that. So he does end up switching out, which makes me think he's probably not Scarfed, and he brings in the Tapu Bulu. Tapu Bulu was one of the Pokemon I was not really too sure what he was going to go with, like a bulky variant or a super offensive variant, but I decided to just stay in turn 1 and see what he's going to do and go for a Fake Out. I could have obviously gone for something like a low kick or a return or even predicted the switch, but I just wanted to see what he was going to switch out into. So go for the Fake Out, and it does pretty much negligible damage to the Tapu Bulu. So it looks like a bulky variant, and that's confirmed when the Leftovers comes out. So yeah, that's good to confirm. I'd rather see a bulky variant than like a Choice Band variant, which I was actually really worried about because like Choice Band Woodhammer would really blow through everything. So figure Aegislash is my best switch in here to really take an attack, and we see the Substitute as well. So Aegislash here though, however, a pretty good wall, especially with Life Orb, a Flash Cannon. Like I'm gonna be able to just knock him out after knocking out the Substitute anyway. That being said, I kind of want to bait him this next turn, so I kind of pretend that I don't have a Flash Cannon, and I go for the Shadow Ball instead, just to maybe bait him into staying in. I do get pretty lucky there with the Leech Seed Avoid. Doesn't matter too much, but of course, it does chip away a little bit at my health every turn while he heals back, although he's going to be back at full health after this turn anyway, so go for the Shadow Ball, break the Substitute, and take a little bit of Life Orb damage, but overall, obviously a positive turn given that I didn't get Leech Seeded. So this next turn, I don't think this Tapu Bulu is going to really have anything to hit the Aegislash offensively, so I end up just going for another Shadow Ball, thinking that he's going to substitute here, and that is exactly what he goes for. Or sorry, no, I go for the Flash Cannon here. Apologies. hoping that I was just going to be able to get the knockout there. But he does go for the substitute. So, you know, Shadow Ball might have been a little bit better. But like I said, I was kind of hoping to bait him into thinking, oh, maybe I don't have Flash Cannon. So I go for it. He goes for the smarter play of substitute, and it works out on his end. But I feel like this is still a decent positive trade on my end. Like, Tapu Bulu isn't doing anything right now, and as he keeps subbing, like, I'm healing back from grassy terrain, so I'm content just consistently attacking. This next turn, I go for the Shadow Ball, thinking that he might have Disable, but also just thinking, okay, he's gonna probably click Substitute again, so there's no need to waste Flash Cannon PP. So that works out really, really well. We chunked the Tapu Bulu for a large amount, and he's now in KO range of another Shadow Ball. Even if he keeps subbing, like, I'm winning the positive trade on this end. So fortunately, we don't get disabled, which is really nice, and we don't waste anything really this turn. So I feel like I'm in a pretty good spot right now with Aegislash, and I've been able to really chunk away at this Tapu Bulu. He is going to switch out here, back out into the Crocodile, which is definitely a solid play. I was really considering running Sacred Sword on this Aegislash, but I ended up opting not to go for it. So just click Shadow Ball here for some free damage, and we actually end up getting a critical hit, which does a ton of damage to the Crocodile. So that's pretty solid. Obviously, this next turn, I'm actually really scared of Pursuit Crocodile, so if I just switched out into Pursuit, I would lose Aegislash instantly, and so for that reason, I go for a King Shield instead. I was thinking of going for another Shadow Ball, and that plus Shadow Sneak with Life Orb might have been enough to knock out the Crocodile. Wasn't entirely sure, but no Pursuit comes out. Instead, it's just the Stealth Rock, so kind of kicking myself there because I could have switched out, but I couldn't risk losing Aegislash at that point, so I played it a little bit safer. Now I'm going to bring out Lopunny. Obviously, Pursuit's not going to knock me out at this point anyway, and he goes for a knockoff, so that's pretty good. We are able to take that pretty well. And it doesn't remove any item from our side either. I figured he's probably going to switch out the Crocodile here, and I just go for the safe play of going for a return. I did have Fire Punch, but I didn't think he was going to just switch in Genesect, like, carelessly here. So Tapu Bulu comes back out, and I actually didn't even max out Lopunny's return here because we had the battle scheduled, and so I got it to as high as I could, so it actually doesn't get the knockout there. But that's fine. I know that the Bulu is in KO range from another return at this point, so should be able to pick it off now. I figure he's just going to sacrifice it. The Bulu really isn't doing too much, and so we do get our first knockout, and Tapu Bulu goes down without really doing anything, so I'm pretty happy about that. I wasn't even sure if he was going to bring Tapu Bulu into this matchup, but getting it out the way is quite nice because it is bulky and quite obnoxious. So Alakazam comes out now, and obviously Alakazam's going to want to go for a Psychic type attack, so I go for a relatively obvious switching into Aegislash, thinking, okay, even if you Shadow Ball me, I'll just Shadow Sneak to knock you out the next turn. So felt like a pretty free switch in here, one that forces the Alakazam to switch out. No reason to really risk losing Lopunny at this point. So Alakazam here is going to Mega Evolve, and he goes for a really cool play of going for the Psychic Terrain. I really wasn't expecting that, but that is the perfect counter to my Life Orb Aegislash with Shadow Sneak. So that was a really brilliant call on his end. That being said, I can still take any attack from this Alakazam and knock it out in return with, like, a Shadow Ball. So I'm content just attacking here, and he also reveals Protect. So two things I definitely wasn't anticipating, but two things that really counter this Aegislash well. Go for the Flash Cannon instead of Shadow Ball, anticipating the Alakazam to switch out. And now I just King Shield. I'm willing to trade and play the game of kind of stalling him out. So I go for King Shield. I know Psychic Terrain's going to disappear after a couple turns, and he does reveal Shadow Ball. So I'm content just trading attacks while he protects. I mean, he's basically forced to protect or switch out while I go into Blade form. So we go for the same shenanigans once again, and once again he does go for the protect. So we've already stalled out a couple of turns of Psychic Terrain. This time I do go for the Shadow Ball in case he did want to attack there. But I'm going to play it safe here once again and King Shield. However, Danza makes a really good call here because had he attacked, a Psychic Terrain would have actually disappeared here. And I really wanted to go for like a Flash Cannon here, but I didn't want to risk it because he did Shadow Ball into my King Shield earlier. However, given that I had King Shielded already, like, I feel like it was probably better for me to have attacked here. So that is definitely a big regret there. I think that was a major misplay because if I could have knocked out Crocodile, that would have gotten rid of one of the major threats to my Aegislash. So had a free opportunity, not free per se, but I definitely could have made a ballsy prediction there. I didn't end up going for it. I'm going to switch in Lopunny here because I don't want to take, obviously, any attack from the Crocodile, and I still want to conserve Aegislash for what's in the back. So Lopunny comes in, and I am here to get a relatively free attack off. So Crocodile not going to want to get knocked out by something like a low kick. Actually, the Savali comes in, so I wasn't really too sure what to anticipate from the Savali, like what it was carrying. We go for the low kick here, and it does pretty comfortable damage. And it also reveals that it's Water Savali. So now I feel like it's finally a good time to bring out the Toxapex, because I can go for like Toxic Spikes and whatnot. So the Parting Shot comes out, and I feel like I'm in a pretty good spot. I don't feel like there's too much that really counters this Toxapex directly. and it was like, okay, what can he bring in? Maybe the Alakazam. Instead, it's the Palkia, so I'm kind of worried at this point, thinking, okay, maybe Palkia has something that can counter me, but if he doesn't have something that blocks Infestation, I can kind of just, stall him out with Infestation and heal up with Recover. But instead, he has Substitute, which I should have better anticipated. So with that, it actually does block Infestation, which means he's not trapped in. And I don't really have a great switch into Spatial Rend at this point. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe I can just go and set up my Toxic Spikes at this point. The Spatial Rend actually does more than I expected because I am max HP and Spadef Toxapex. So I go for the Toxic Spikes, but I'm like, oh man, that's like not great damage there for me. I'm not too happy about that. And this Palkia counters my Toxapex perfectly. Which explains obviously why he brought it in. So he also reveals the heal block, which I was okay with. I figured another Spatial Rend would knock me out anyway, so I actually just ended up going for a second layer of Toxic Spikes. And at this point, I'm willing to just concede the Toxic Spikes because I felt like I got a little bit flustered while playing the game at this point. I was like, oh man, like what do I do? Do I switch this Toxic Spikes out? Who do I go out into? I think in retrospect, it would have been smarter to switch Toxic Spikes out into Aegislash, and I gave it up way too easily in this game because it's such a good counter to so many of the other things that he had. So really not happy about how I played that. At this point, though, I bring in the Lopunny, hoping to break the Palkia Substitute, but I'm in a pretty precarious position right now because Rocks is set up, which is the main problem. So I can't really just sweep with Rayquaza like I wanted to, and it's still a little bit early in the game to be able to sweep. The Palkia does reveal the Brine, so I know the Palkia's full moveset at this point. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe now this is a good time to bring in my Kartana and Defog so I can set up for Rayquaza. I was hoping he'd be scared of Z, like Grass Kartana, and switch out and give me a free Defog, but that's not the case, and so that was definitely a pretty bad outcome for him to stay in. But it makes sense on his end. Even if I Z him, he's able to just switch into the Genesect. The other downside is, of course, I get rid of my Toxic Spikes, and so that was actually, like, I actually forgot that Defog gets rid of the Toxic Spikes on my end, although I felt like it was still worth defogging there, so I could bring in my main sweeper and Rayquaza, go for the Dragon Dance. Either way, though, this is not the prime time to have Rayquaza out, right? Because, first of all, I'm kind of surprised that I outspeed him, but Danza later told me that the Palkia was Miss-EV'd and was supposed to outspeed Rayquaza, which obviously makes sense. So, I get the Dragon Dance off, and I guess I'm content seeing Palkia stay in here, because one play he could have made was actually switching out into Crocodile to get the initial Intimidate. If he misses that Spatial Rend, though, I'm actually in a really, really good spot, but obviously the chances of that is quite low. So now I have to kind of just attack. I could have brought out the Aegislash, but I figured that didn't really accomplish much because the Palkia could just keep substituting. And Mamoswine isn't one-shotting the Palkia in that range, so I kind of felt forced to make this play. And I think if I had, I should have had Freeze Dry on my Mamoswine as well. That would have forced me not to bring out this Rayquaza so early. He brings in Genesect, which I'm thinking, okay, you've got to be Scarfed or you have to have Extreme Speed, so I kind of feel forced to switch out because the Rayquaza can still do a lot to the things in the back. So I bring in Aegislash. Him going for a U-turn reveals to me that he's got to be Choice Scarf pretty much because you would not risk just fainting to a Dragon Ascent there unless you're making a really, really ballsy prediction. So I feel like this game is still winnable, but it is certainly going to be difficult right now as Crocodile comes in. So at this point, expecting him to just go for a knockoff. So I go out back into Rayquaza, hoping so that Rayquaza faints and I get the free switch into Mamoswine. So Rayquaza comes out, but surprisingly, he actually ends up going for the Stealth Rock, which I thought was actually in my favor here because that means Rayquaza does get a free Dragon Ascent off, which we definitely take. And at this point, I'm considering, okay, what does he have on his team? There's the Genesect, which should faint to a Shadow Ball at this point from the Aegislash after like some Earthquake chip damage. So I'm thinking the way I need to close out this game is chip everything with the Mamoswine and then hope that the Aegislash can really close things out. But I'm still in an awkward position here because I also don't know how the Genesect is invested. And I think I also just didn't have a great end game plan against Genesect. I was expecting it to come out in the game earlier, so I go for the Extreme Speed, which actually does pretty solid damage. I'm thinking now maybe a Life Orb Shadow Ball actually could knock it out. If not after Earthquake damage, it certainly will. But there's nothing else I can really do there. I could have switched out into, I guess, Mamoswine, but the Rayquaza is dead weight anyway at this point. So it's 2-3. I know Aegislash will be able to one-shot the Alakazam. So I kind of have to bring out the Mamoswine here and just click Earthquake right now. So pretty much Scarf, Earthquake, everything. I know I can take a Flamethrower from the Genesect as well, so I'm really hoping that Earthquake knocks out Savali if it's not bulky, but unfortunately it is actually quite bulky and takes that relatively comfortably. He actually goes for the Surf, and the Water type Savali was a great call against my team because of course I had Mamoswine and the Magmortar. So we actually end up surviving, which is quite nice. Wasn't expecting that, but that explains it given how much bulk that this volley had. Go for another Earthquake here, and we do get the knockout. So it's 2-2 right now, but, and I was like, okay, the way I win this is if Genesect's Flamethrower at +1, assuming it gets the download boost here, doesn't knock out my Aegislash. And I'm assuming he's Scarf, so I'm assuming he's just going to lock himself into Flamethrower. So I was like, okay, well, the way I have to win this is if I somehow survive the Flamethrower, Shadow Ball knocks him out, and then Shadow Sneak knocks him out. But unfortunately, I feel like at this point I've taken too much damage with Aegislash for that to be the case. So after Rocks, you know, like, I think it's probably unlikely, but that's the only way I have to go for. If he's like Flamethrower with no special attack investment, then maybe there's a chance to get the knockouts that I'm looking for. But unfortunately, Flamethrower does get the knockout, and Danza does take this set 2-0. So really well played on his end. I feel like out of all the weeks of GBA, this is the week where Danza came with like the most techs, and they were really good. Obviously, the Psychic Terrain Alakazam was a brilliant call, and I kind of wish, I kind of regret not playing a little bit more aggressively, like going for the return with Lopunny there. Like, Danza's too smart of a player to just Psychic into an Aegislash, into a Lopunny that could switch into Aegislash. So, like, returning into the Alakazam was certainly a viable play, albeit risky, but that means I would trade Lopunny for a free switching into Aegislash, which would be fine. I regret not going for attacking the Alakazam the second time around. The turn Psychic Terrain disappeared because given that I had shown that I was going to King Shield earlier, it's likely that I was going to go for it again. So I feel like I just played a little bit too predictable, and Danza ultimately really was able to neuter my Toxapex, which was one of the main problems because that was one of my main answers to dealing with Genesect. So really well prepared on his end. And ultimately, like, I feel like I had some good tools here, but, you know, if I could change things in terms of the team that I brought, I would maybe consider putting Freeze Dry on the Mamoswine just to pressure the Palkia a little bit more. Definitely, I also could have switched out Toxapex the turn that Palkia came in. I'd seen him use, like, Heal Block before, so it's not like the sub Heal Block was inconceivable. Had I switched into something like Lopunny immediately, I could have just gotten rid of the sub, and I could have conserved Toxapex for the late game. And I feel like ultimately I just didn't have the best game plan. Like, towards the end, I was like, okay, I can have a chance of winning if he isn't this spread, but he's probably going to be this spread most of the time. And I think even with uninvested Genesect Flamethrower at +1, you're going to be able to, like, you would probably have needed the lowest row possible. I actually don't know what the tiebreaker in GBA is if you both faint from Life Orb Recoil, because I was thinking, alright, maybe Shadow Ball knocks out Genesect if he has no investment, he brings out Alakazam, and I just Shadow Sneak to win the game, and we both faint there. That was like the best case scenario, but I think even with no investment Flamethrower plus the Life Orb Recoil after the first attack, I would have fainted anyway. So I wasn't expecting to win that one in the end, and should have conserved the Aegislash a little bit better. Ultimately, yeah, I don't think I prepped well enough for Genesect, and I don't know, like, I could have brought Magmortar. I think Scarf Evolve could have been better. I was thinking of teching, like, Fire-type attacks onto the different things. I did have Fire Punch on Lopunny, but that doesn't really counter Scarf Genesect too well. So I think Danza played really well by conserving Scarf Genesect until the end. And I was hoping to kind of chip away at it earlier on in the game, but that ended up not being the case. Water-type Savali was a really cool tech as well, and ultimately my Toxapex was just pretty useless. So nice prep on his end. Yeah, especially because of Infestation. I was like, oh, this is the week where Infestation could really work. I just trap in Palkia, knock it out, get my Toxic Spikes up, heal all the way back up, and it'll be free. But that was not the case. I think Xurkitree definitely could have maybe done something here. But the thing is, like, Scarf Xurkitree is still getting outsped by Scarf Genesect, even like Mega Alakazam. So I didn't feel that great about it. Z Xurkitree, pretty tough to set up. And once again, you're still getting outsped after the speed boost. I think Scarf Evolve maybe could have been viable. But ultimately, I think I definitely got out-prepped this week, but it was still a winnable game, I think, because one of my main win conditions was getting the Rayquaza out at a better time, and I got flustered by the sub-Palkia, and so I pretty much wasted Palkia and Kartana entirely. in this match. I wasn't sure if Spatial Ride was going to knock me out because I did have some special defense and HP investment, but that ended up being the case anyway, which was quite unfortunate. I don't know whether that was a damager or just a guaranteed knockout. I did do the calc on that one, but yeah. I think ultimately Danza just, prepped better than me, and I'm curious on what you guys think would have been better to bring into this matchup because, like I mentioned, I didn't have too much time to prepare for it to begin with, and even with the time that I had, I didn't come up with anything that was like game-breaking or game-changing. And the combination of like Bulk, Intimidate, and just really smart sets on Genesect and Palkia and Alakazam really gave me a tough time this week. So yeah, definitely be curious on your guys' insight. I think I probably over-prepped for his Heatran as well, which I was just really scared of because it walls Cortana and Aegislash. To an extent, obviously both of those have Sacred Sword, but yeah. So great game to Danza there. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean we fall to 5-3. And I wasn't looking too deeply into the standings for playoffs. I thought I was more or less going to be locked in after being 5-1, but Danza pulling this resurgence means that he's actually contending for a spot as well, and our differential wasn't too great, so I actually have to play really well these last 2 weeks. If I win the last two, that guarantees me a spot in playoffs, and if I win one, lose one, there's still a decent chance, but if I lose both, I think I'm pretty much out. Obviously, like I said, going into the season, my goal was to just get break even in terms of wins and get some good singles experience. I'm happy about that, but taking 2 losses in a row doesn't feel too great. You guys will be able to hear my perspective against MV later on, and obviously I'm competitive. I don't like losing, so definitely going to buckle down. Unfortunately, I have a lot more time to prepare for these next 2 weeks, definitely more than I had for these previous 2 weeks, and so hopefully with some better prep, I'll be able to perform a little bit better. I feel like this game, I didn't really play it extraordinarily well as well. Part of the issue is just giving up Pokemon way too easily for free and not setting up a main win condition well enough. And once again, that's just Danza coming up with this really great Palkia set. So yeah, Tuxabex, you tried. Unfortunately, this was not the week, but really great game to Danza. He was definitely the better player and definitely the better team builder going into this week. So yeah. The Melbourne Rotoms, of course, will be back next week in Week 9 as we try to recover from this loss and hopefully nab a win. If not, then if we lose next week, it's really like the last week is going to be really close. We're still a game ahead of Danza, but it's quite scary at this point, especially because their differential is quite mediocre given the offensive nature of this team. Obviously, I'd like to make playoffs, make a deep run in it, but at this point, I feel like it's nice to be able to take these losses as well because it has exposed some of the weaknesses of this team and my team building. So hopefully I'll be able to leverage that and play a little bit better in these last 2 weeks in the GBA. So yeah. Thanks for watching, guys. The game against MV will be up shortly later this week. I'm back on the channel with regular VGC content, so please watch that if you're interested in VGC. Thanks for watching. Go check out Danza. Great opponent, great player. Thanks to him for playing around my schedule. We had to both play at like 1 in the morning, so that was rather unfortunate for both of us. But props to him because he really impressed me as a player and team builder. So check him out. Link in the description below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and I will see you guys in Week 9. All right, peace.